If you don't have that authority and you don't assume that energy right off the bat, then it leads way for your client to walk over you at times. I've seen it happen, and I let one client do this, I think, early in my career. But, you learn, and I just can't stress this enough. And it's something I talk to some of the newer agents about too. It's like, you have to be the authority. They're looking to you for guidance and for that leadership, and you need to be that and take them where they need to go.
Welcome to the Real Better Life podcast, where people that are writing stories worth telling share their knowledge, wisdom, and perspective to help you go further, faster as you move to your better life. Over to your hosts, Dave Ness and Rob Alkema.
Brandon Sampson, hello.
Hello, good sir.
Dude, I love that we threw this together within like the last hour.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah. So you are on fire right now, which is why I reached out to you. I had a couple things move around in my schedule, and I was like, hey man, can you come in and just talk about what's going really well for you right now? And just to share with the listening audience, I went back and looked. You had 4 under contracts in April. You've had 2 more under contracts just in the last week, which were about just over a week into May. And then you've also had 2 listings signed. And then you also just told me while we were sitting down, you've got 3 more listings that are about to get signed. Like you've got the paperwork out and just waiting to get it back. And then just this past week, you had a past client that reached out to you out of the blue about a buy-sell. Right. So needless to say, you have a lot of stuff in your pipeline. What I wanted to talk about is not just that. I actually want to backtrack a little bit because here we're sitting in May, and I know you had a goal going into the year. You had a really slow start to the year.
Extremely. About as slow as it gets.
About as slow as it gets. I imagine, we haven't talked about this yet. I imagine that had to be frustrating. And so I guess let's start there. How are you feeling for maybe the first roughly 3 months of the year where you were working? I see you in the office more than anybody in the office except for maybe John now.
Yeah.
Right. So like you were working, you've been plugging away diligently. I know you spent a lot of time like really getting your goals and your action plan for 2024 dialed in. So I imagine that had to be frustrating, but just what's been going through your head at the start of the year?
So yeah, I mean, as January passed and 0 under contract, and then February came and went, still 0 under contract. It's a little troubling, right, to think about, but I knew I was doing the right things. And so it seems simple and stupid, but I really was grinding every day. My mindset was the same. I knew I was going to pop. Business was just constipated. That's really the way I saw it.
I love that word.
That's what it was. There was some stuff up there, but nothing was coming out. So, I just kept my head down and I kept doing what I had to do.
So when you say, I knew I was doing the right things, I wrote that down and I'm like, what are the right things?
Okay.
For you?
The right things for me are just eat, sleep, breathe, real estate, and that starts with staying informed and updated and that sort of thing, with podcast, with my mindset, with working out. I think that helped a lot. And then, like you said, I've been in the office because it's very easy for me to get distracted at home with dogs or just doing random things. So by coming to the office, being around other people whenever they would pop in, it just set the stage for the right environment for me to be able to pick up on any momentum that I could.
Good. And then when you talk about podcasts, mindset, things like that, like what are some specific ones that are part of your routine that you really like?
Well, the Tom Ferry podcast absolutely is like a must for anyone, right? He doesn't put out as many episodes as he used to, right? Yeah. But sometimes I'll still go back to some, or, I just make sure I'm up to date on those. Some of them are longer form, some of them are shorter form, so you get through them quick. In a given week, he might not have another episode, so then I go on to the Jay Shetty podcast. That's become one of my favorites.
Yep.
He has some great guests come on there. And every now and then I sprinkle in some Joe Rogan now that it's back on Apple Podcasts, which is good. But yeah, a lot of his guests are more comedians and that sort of thing. So I try to aim for the ones that aren't, just to kind of get some variety outside of the real estate.
What else do you read and study, real estate wise or non-real estate?
I would say Dr. Joe Dispenza. I know I've talked to you about him, big energy guy, right? So I've actually been doing a ton of his meditations as well. And other than that, I mean, that's really been my focus is that. I go back and I'll listen to some other audiobooks at times if I don't have a podcast I'm listening to. But yeah, I think those are the main ones.
How much do you feel like some of the Joe Dispenza meditations have impacted your recent results?
It's a great question. And I just don't know how to even, measure that.
It's hard to know exactly what to attribute that to. Well, so here you are, you're doing the right things. It's not happening in January. It's not happening in February. It's not really happening in March, although things start to pop a little bit in March. When you look back, maybe at the last 90 days, was there anything you did differently than the previous 90 days? Was there anything you tweaked or adjusted that you think made a difference?
I wish there was. But I'm telling you, I have been consuming this really and knowing this is what I need to be doing and continuing with follow-up, continuing with just having a positive mindset, even when not every lead's going to work out. I mean, I've had multiple leads that I thought were going to transact that didn't for whatever reason or haven't yet, right? Like a couple people from out of state that one ended up choosing a different state and then one is going to rent for the time being to get a better feel for an area, right? And so did I create good relationships there? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm confident at some point, especially the people who are moving here and renting, I'm confident I'll transact with them and they'll give me that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, things don't always go the way you want them to go. And so it's okay. What's next?
When you talk, like you mentioned, protecting your mindset a couple times already, obviously you're reading and listening to a lot of stuff. And I know that helps. When you're putting good stuff in, you're typically going to get good stuff out. And ideas have consequences for sure. But it also sounds like maybe there's some other things that you're doing proactively, whether that's meditations or do you practice self-talk? Do you have affirmations written down at your house or in the car? Like, what are specific nitty-gritty things you do to protect your mindset?
Yeah, the affirmations piece, I'm not as consistent with it, but there are mornings when I'll write out affirmations and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I'm confident, right? And I'm delusional because, all things might say like, man, this isn't working out. But also, I know at the beginning of my career too, because I've been doing this, so I've kind of been through slumps before and I've been through ups and downs. And I think now I'm just in a different place where I understand it better and can navigate it the right way.
Because you've seen yourself go through them and come out on the other side.
Right.
Just fine. Dude, that's huge. Weird question. I would consider a 3-month slump a pretty big slump.
Huge.
How many big slumps have you been through in roughly the last 4 years?
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest one.
Okay.
That was the biggest one for sure. Like I said, I've had some minor slumps, but a whole quarter was tough. But, I think I told you too back in March because I knew things were going to happen. I just said, I feel like Tom Brady giving you guys a lead. And I'm just going to come back and take it.
That's great. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was I asked you before we jumped on here, hey, are there any teachable moments from some of the transactions that you're currently working on or that you've been working on? And there was one in particular that you mentioned that was not easy, but you got it under contract. You went through some speed bumps.
Yeah.
And you've gotten it closed already since then. Can you talk about that a little bit more? What in particular was tricky about that and how'd you work through it?
Yeah. So the client himself was very, what's the word? Just not skittish, but he was nervous throughout the whole thing. First time home buyer, right? Yep. And great guy, but also nervous. So every piece of that, I had to have a lot of patience and understanding and let him know it's okay and empathize with him, but let him know, hey, I'm going to take you to the promised land here.
Yeah.
Starting with the initial offer to the counter, to inspection, to appraisal was really challenging with this one. So to give context, we were under contract, I believe it was at 520, and the appraisal came in at 506. So that's a $14K difference. And on top of that, we had $15K in credits. So we were under contract at 520 with $15K in credits. So that could go, many different ways.
Right.
Many different ways. And one of the more common scenarios that would probably play out is the seller asking, hey, we can drop the price, but you're going to lose those credits, right? Because that'll kind of offset it.
Yep.
And just talking through the scenarios with my client and then presenting them in a way with the agent on the other side, we were able to lower the price and get the credits still. We still got $12K in credits and they lowered the price $14,000.
How did you negotiate that? What was your strategy?
I presented the options to the agent, which she was well aware of. But it helps because sometimes you do get a little lucky with the agent on the other side. It's usually the hardest part of our job, right? Is the agent on the other side. But when you have a good one, it does help because they understand the scenarios that you're going to lay out for them.
Got it.
And so I just laid it out. And with it being an FHA deal, like they could go back to market, but they're going to have to drop the price anyway, right? Because that appraisal is going to stick with the property.
Yep.
And so I just laid out the options and said, hey, this is what my client needs. Can you help us out? And can we make this work? Yeah, we were able to get it done.
Nice. How important is it to you to build a relationship throughout the transaction with the agent that you're co-oping with?
If they'll allow it, it's super important.
Yeah,
you know?
They intentionally put up the walls.
Yeah, exactly. But this one, she was great. She was familiar with my lender as well. So right off the bat, there was some sort of rapport there.
Okay. What are some other things you do to build rapport when you're trying to build that relationship with the other agent?
I make jokes.
You got any good ones you can share?
I mean, she texted me. She goes, yeah, hey, like, did you guys give us a post-doc? I can't remember. And I said, yep. And she goes, what was the cost on that? And I just said, free $99. And she got a chuckle out of that. You know?
Nice. And you know what they say, be funny, make money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Good for you, dude. Oh, that's great. Good. Nice job working through that. Any other teachable moments from any of these other transactions you've been working on?
I mean, they're all super different.
Because you got a good mix of buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
What about sources? Like, where did these come from?
Yeah, most of them are Zillow, but I have a listing that just went under contract this week. That's a past client of mine that has taken a lot of patience. And it's a very tricky situation because if numbers don't work out, she's bringing money to the table at closing as a seller. So I was constantly trying to rework numbers different ways to make offers work. And we got something on the table this past week, and I just flat out told her, like, this is the best we're going to get. We're lucky we got this one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do everything I can on my end with numbers to make this work for you, but I'm going to need you to also like understand the weight of this.
Is she going to have to bring cash to the table?
She is, but it's not a large amount.
Minimal.
So, yeah.
What's interesting in those last couple of ones that you're talking about is there was a point in each transaction where, my words, not yours, you had to not just listen and empathize and figure out what your client wants and needs, but you had to lead the client. Can you talk about that a little bit of what are some word tracks or phrases or just mindset things that you use when it's time to step in and say, here's what needs to happen, or here's how this is going to go? Because sometimes that can be challenging, especially if you're telling them something that they're not excited to hear, or something that, like that first example, it sounds like, you know, maybe for him being a first-time home buyer and being skittish, telling him things that were potentially going to scare him, but you also knowing like, this is what we have to do. This is what this dude needs to hear if we're actually going to get him into the home that he wants to be in.
Yep. And it's not just what they have to hear. It's what you have to tell them, right? Like you have to be the authority.
Yeah.
You are the professional. They have hired you and you need to walk that walk. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important. I think a lot of people lose sight of that earlier on in the transaction even. And then that is a snowball effect throughout the whole transaction. So I think I do a decent enough job of just assuming that role from the very beginning.
Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. Just, you mentioned, leading them, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's very clear in the beginning that I have not only that mindset, but I'm giving them the right expectations.
And when you say like at the beginning, are you talking first showing? Are you talking like your first sit down for a strategy session?
Yeah, strategy session is probably the best route if you don't know them already. Because that's when it's like, hey, I actually do this. You think I just opened this door and yeah, we had a great conversation, but this is what's going to happen in order for us to be successful throughout this whole thing and for you guys to have a good time and enjoy the process that is buying and selling, right? Yeah. And I think if you don't have that authority and you don't assume that energy right off the bat, then it leads way for your client to walk over you at times. I've seen it happen, and I let one client do this, I think, early in my career. But, you learn. And again, I just can't stress this enough. And it's something I talk to some of the newer agents about too. It's like, you have to be the authority. They're looking to you for guidance and for that leadership. And you need to be that and take them where they need to go.
Do you have an example, whether it's from one of those two people that you were talking about that you're working with, or just a general example of like, what does that sound like when you're sitting down in the strategy session, the expectations part?
Yeah. So my mind immediately goes to this listing appointment I had this past weekend. These folks thought they would list at 740.
Mm-hmm.
And initially I was thinking 675 when I walked before I got to the house, right?
That's a big gap.
Well, because you never know when you go to a listing appointment.
Yeah.
You really don't know.
Wait, so you mean some sellers think their house is worth more than it is?
Yeah, Yeah. But after having the tour of the property, 700 seemed absolutely like justifiable. And I was on board with that.
Yep.
But at
That's
the end of the
still a
day,
40K gap.
It is. But, they trusted me with what I had to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I let them know at the end of the day, I work for you. And we can list it at 740 and we can stay on the market for 3 months. And if you're okay with that, and then eventually dropping price and doing this, that, and the other, and hoping and praying for one offer instead of getting maybe a couple and getting better terms.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I could go into a whole rabbit hole about this, but I broke it down for them, expectations.
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm not saying you're wrong. We can do it, but just know this is probably going to happen. So are you guys okay with that? Well, no, you're right. I can understand now 700 because of this, that, and what you said.
Yep.
I think it's very easy to try and disagree with people and try to butt heads, even if you're not meaning to, but you're not looking at the problem side by side, right?
You're looking at it like across from them.
Yeah. And so when you go side by side, it's like, yeah, I see that. And here's what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
You give them that other option and you're both looking at that option together and the pros and cons of that. It's easy for them to make that decision for themselves at that point.
Yeah. So what do you do? So we're getting into a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I think this is good. What do you do when in the past, I'm sure this has happened to you, you sit down, you have that conversation, you're on their side, you're right because you do this for a living and they don't, but they are adamant about their unrealistic expectations. They're adamant about, nope, we want to list it for this. What do? Do you still take the listing? Have you ever parted ways with a client because you're like, I just don't want to deal with what I'm going to have to deal with because they don't have realistic expectations of how this is going to go, and it's going to create all sorts of problems and headaches and extra work? And what does that look like?
I don't think I've parted ways with a client off the top of my head. I'm trying to think if I have. I don't think I have. But setting that, another expectation, I hate to go back to that, but it's okay, hey, we can do that at 740, but would you guys get on board with after 3 weeks, if we don't have this, we will have it in our agreement that we will automatically drop price to this.
Got it.
So it's lining up the next step.
Because you're probably going to need a contingency.
Right.
Another weird question. Have you ever been wrong? Like that scenario, they want to list at 740. You're like, nope, we're going to be lucky if we get 7 for it.
Yeah.
And you list it and it goes way higher than you think it was going to.
I know for a fact I have been. It's inevitable that that's going to happen. That was when the market was crazy. So,
God, it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, yeah, we did it.
That one time. Good. Is it cool if we shift gears a little bit?
Of course.
Because one of the other things I wanted to touch on is when you were telling me not just, so I'm looking at this, 6 under contracts in the last, I'm going to call it 45 days, and 2 listing agreements signed with 3 other listing agreements out there and a buy-sell looming on the horizon. You got a lot of stuff in your pipeline. And we were talking about, hey man, how do you manage the chaos of having that many under contracts, that many listings? Like you got a ton of stuff. And I think you said to me, you're like, dude, my mind is just going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like I'm exhausted, basically. So how do you navigate that? And then also one of the big threats that we've seen, and we kind of had a little chuckle about this, is one of the hardest parts of real estate is when things are going really, really well, there's this tendency to just sort of put the blinders on, work on the stuff that you've got in the pipeline, close it out. But then what happens is you'll close everything out. You just made a ton of money. Your numbers look great, but then your pipeline dried up.
Right.
Because you were so busy working what was in the pipeline that you didn't put new stuff in the pipeline.
Yep.
So I guess 2 questions. One is, how do you navigate it while you're in the midst of the chaos and not get completely overwhelmed? And then number 2 is, how do you make sure that you keep putting new things in your pipeline so that it doesn't empty out and you don't have what we call the roller coaster effect?
Yeah, classic. Okay, so the first part of that, keeping my mind organized and how do I manage everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm making notes every day, usually every night as like a recap, and sometimes in the morning, right? So one of the things is I'll just write out, okay, who are my hot clients right now? And I like to write it out. I know you can do this within Follow Up Boss and whatever. It's so much better to just write it out. And you can visually see everyone all at once. So I'll have a list of hot clients, a list of under contracts, a list of warm clients, which are typically like, maybe they're in the process of getting pre-approved or I've done one showing with them, right?
Yep.
And then listings that are coming up usually or on the market, I guess. By kind of doing a brain dump of that.
It's a great term.
It allows me to figure out, okay, how can I prioritize and execute?
Yes. Love that.
Yeah. A lot of times it's happening at night, especially this past week, because I'm on the go. I mean, oh man, yesterday was crazy. I had to pee for like 4 hours. And I had to drive from North Glen to South Littleton.
Bro, you're young now, but that's not good for your bladder.
I hear you. And I was thinking like, okay, as long as this listing is in like decent shape that I'm about to go to, I'll ask to use the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a disaster. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get in and out of here. And then I had to find a Whole Foods. And then, I had like an inspection resolution I needed to complete last night.
Yep.
So I just went to the Whole Foods like cafe and ended up knocking out what I had to do there. So it's by having the brain dump, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know like those main things that need to happen throughout the day, even if I have appointments. And so, I'm making phone calls and doing the logistical things on the way to my appointments.
What's interesting is, do you make it a priority? Like I noticed Whole Foods, do you make it a priority to eat well, even when you're slammed?
I try,
okay,
but it does not happen.
Okay.
So yesterday, I don't think I ate like anything until dinner.
Okay.
Which was crazy.
So you are human.
Yeah.
What about working out? I know like for a lot of the last year, you've been in a better rhythm with working out. And we've talked about that before, just kind of off the cuff of how when you're working out consistently, just so many other things go better, both personally and work-wise.
Yep. So last 2 weeks, off the rails. Yeah, so that's a focus. That's a focus.
You hear that, Basie? Get him in the gym.
Yeah.
go knock on his door at 5 a.m.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like I noticed, though, I have to take that extra hour in the morning because I love to do a mid to late morning workout.
Yeah.
Can't do that right now.
No. Dude, I appreciate the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Just it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, and you got to adjust. So,
yep.
And I knew that was going to come. So again, I've kind of been through these phases, right?
Yep.
So I think I'm just better equipped to handle them now.
Okay.
What was the second part?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the second part was
the roller coaster.
Yeah. How do you prevent the roller coaster from happening as you're working on closing out everything that's currently under contract?
Yeah. So it's a big focus of mine just because I have been doing this, right, for 4+ years now. So I understand the roller coaster. I've been on the roller coaster. I'm just trying to be on a spaceship that just keeps going up. Okay.
I like that.
So the under contracts I have, again, I'm making notes of deadlines that need to be taken care of with those. And I understand I have to knock those out, but I am not consuming myself with being wrapped up with under contracts. I'm here for my clients. I'm always a phone call, a text away, and I'm going to do everything I can. But under contracts are great in the sense of, hey, like, we're doing the thing, right? But I am majorly focused on getting more under contracts.
Yep.
And getting new clients. And yeah, just going on appointments, really.
So is that your focal point? Because I was just going to ask that. Like, what does that look like? Do you have a set number of new leads that you want to take? Are you focusing more on just whatever I got to do to get appointments? Because you're not brand new. You're not just 1 year in. Are you still asking for referrals from past clients? Are you doing real estate reviews or anniversary check-ins? Or like, I know I'm just throwing random stuff out there, but what does it look like to put additional stuff in your pipeline? And what's typically your target? Because you can't also, I hate calling it prospecting. I can't think of a better word, but you can't prospect all the time because you literally don't have the margin, right? So like, how much is enough to make sure the pipeline keeps flowing?
Yeah, I mean, a couple new appointments a week is ideal, like at minimum. That's my ultimate goal. If I could just go on one appointment a day though, I mean, who wouldn't want that?
What do you qualify as an appointment?
Well, if it's a listing appointment in person at their house, unless they're out of state, then on Zoom, which I've done. And then, a strategy session with the buyer.
Yeah.
I typically do mine on Zoom, but I know everyone kind of has a different process.
Yep. Good. So you said 2 appointments a week is the focal point.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
and maybe
if we get in front of people, we're getting business,
Yeah. Is it safe to say like when the pipeline's not as full that you're aiming more for like an appointment a day?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm still aiming for that appointment a day. I'm trying to figure out where to get it, right?
Yeah. So leads is a big part of that, but what else?
Yeah. I'm pretty good at nurturing my clients. So I know that's partially a leads thing, but I know my database. I know where they're at. Like I know I have this guy who I started helping last June, and he's moving here from Massachusetts, and he's finally going to be in town this month. He's actually in town right now, but he said he wanted to connect in the later half of the month.
Okay.
So here soon. And I've stayed in touch with this guy for almost a year now and haven't actually met him in person.
Good. And the staying in touch, is that phone calls, text messages, Loom videos? Is it value adds? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's just text messages and phone calls.
Okay. What else, man? What else have I not asked you that I should ask you before we wrap up?
I mean, I can't think of anything, but it's nothing fancy that I'm doing. And yeah, check on me in 2 months because I want to just be on the same trajectory. That is definitely, I can't stress that enough. The roller coaster is not something I'm trying to be on. So
last question for you. What's one thing moving forward, like in the immediate future? What's one thing that you want to work on or get better at?
Just being intentional with my time. I'm decent at it, but I can be better, especially after listening to that last podcast that you guys had.
With Landon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just his morning routine and how he goes about that. I know in order for me to sustain and continue on, where I'm going here, I need to also take care of myself better. So
yeah,
just being more dialed in with what I need as a human.
Yeah, that's great. Love it. All right, man. Well, let's wrap up for today, and looking forward to seeing you in Cancun.
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.